Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Dan File, and I'm a solutions architect with Megaport. Going to tell you a little bit about Megaport and do some updates, and then we'll go into the portal and kind of do a live demo. If you have any questions, you can put those in your chat box, and we'll try to get to those either at the end or maybe we'll do them in the middle. I do have somebody working with me, so they'll be monitoring it. So with that, let's kind of start into the presentation. So a little bit of the agenda, I'm just going to give you a quick update on Megaport. I'm going to talk a little bit about Megaport Internet. It's not particularly new, but it is something that's newer that we have. We're going to go through a Megaport use case and a live demo, and then we'll have some questions. So from 2024 coming into 2025, we've expanded our reach to over 930 locations, and we grow at about 50 locations a year. So those locations are public data centers. They're like the core sites and 123 nets and switch of the world, Equinix, Data Bank, et cetera, et cetera. So we're in about 930, maybe as this update is, probably 950 by now. We also launched three new countries, Spain, Italy, and Brazil in 2024. We've launched both an AI exchange and a financial services exchange. So we have those like Latitude SH or other AI type of companies that sit on our backbone that you can directly connect to. The same with financial services. We enabled Microsoft Azure Express Route Metro. If you don't know what that is, an express route comes with a primary and secondary, and typically it's in the same data center on different hardware. Well, Express Route Metro, now you can have the primary in one data center in that metro and the secondary in a different data center in that metro. We're currently working on doing Express Route Metro in the United States as it's relatively new. So first cities that'll be rolled out are like Chicago, Ashburn, Dallas, Atlanta, San Jose, etc. Um, if you don't know about our backbone, it's a global backbone, and we can support 100 gig virtual cross connects. That's what VXCs are, to about 600 data centers. Our most of our backbone is 100 gig and 400 gig, so we can support those 100 gig VXCs across our backbone. For those of you that like to use code, we do use APIs, and we have a Terraform provider that you can use. We also launched an AWS Direct Connect in the marketplace. So we're one of the first ones that have done that. Internet we'll get into in a minute. And then coming up just next month is our NAT gateway. So when you need to use get between your SaaS applications and your VPCs or your VNets, you would typically deploy a NAT gateway in those cloud service providers. And depending upon how much data you transfer between the two, it could be charged a lot of money on a per monthly basis. So we have that gateway that's external to the clouds that you can do that translation between your private side of your workloads and your public SaaS applications. Talk a little bit about our normal use cases and connectivity model. Originally, we started just doing ports and data centers, and you could do a port-to-port connection. So let's say you're in Switch Grand Rapids potentially, and core site in Ashburn or something like that. You would typically use, go to your carrier of choice like Zayo, Windstream, Lumen, whoever, to get some kind of 10 gig wave or protected wave between those data centers. You can do that simply by putting two ports up, one in Switch Grand Rapids, the other one in CoreSite, and just put a 10 gig or 2 gig or whatever size virtual cross connect you want between those locations. And it's as simple as that. Those ports can be spun up in a matter of about 60 seconds. The long pole in the tent obviously is getting the cross connect into your cage. That may take a day or two, depending upon the SLA of your data center operator. But once those ports go live, then you can just spin up the virtual cross connect between those two locations. So it's pretty simple. Um, our other most common use case is data center to cloud. So you can put a port in your data center and you need to get to Azure or AWS or Oracle or Google or one of the 400 other SaaS type providers that sit on our marketplace. You can make those connections directly from that port into the cloud. Our ports can have 100 virtual cross connects, so they're all done on different VLANs. So you can put multiple cloud service providers or marketplace providers on that same port. We have our internet, like we talked about. So data center to internet, that port you can use, as you see in DC to cloud, you can add another VXC, or you can have a port just standing by itself to use to go to the internet. We have diverse carriers. I'm going to show that here in a second about how our internet is put together. And then, of course, you can build a global backbone between all your data centers and potentially even branch offices. So from an internet standpoint of view, you can see where up here we have ports, MCRs, and MVEs. Those are our three different access type components. So if you have a port, you can see here that we have two ISPs and it'll fail over. So one of the ISPs goes down, it'll switch across the HA pair and go out ISP2. The other thing is if you do want truly diverse, because this port, if this route internet router goes down, then obviously that would take it down and it wouldn't fail over to either. You would have to have diverse ports, diverse MCRs, or diverse MVEs to make that truly diverse. But this is kind of under the hood, how our diversity works on our internet. This is going to be talking about our use cases. So let's say that I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and my data center, let's say, is in Neutrality downtown at 210 North Tucker. And I'm going to build a port there. And I need to get to AWS and I need to get to Azure. And potentially I want to do some backup internet. So you can see here that I have 4 virtual cross connects coming off the same port. Maybe this is VLAN 100, 101, 102, 103, whatever VLANs I want to use them. And then I would create those as a sub interface on my router. This is the router that's connected via the fiber in the data center. So this is my cage. This is the Megaport cage in the meet me room. And then from there, you're going to use the portal to make these virtual cross connects. So another thing is this, these AWS Azure in Chicago. So potentially if I need to have AWS talk to Azure, I have to hairpin that through my data center all the way back to St. Louis. That could be, it's not too much latency, but it could make an effect on the performance of the applications. This is where we could talk about putting the Megaport cloud router in the Chicago region, this is just a virtual router. Think about it as a managed router where we have the router load on a virtual platform. We would make the virtual cross connects from here into Azure and then into AWS. We could also tie the internet into the router if we wanted to do so for any public connectivity that needs to come out of Azure or AWS and go out to the internet. We can have that VXC come into the MCR, or we could have that VXC for the internet come all the way back to the port out of St. Louis as maybe a primary or a secondary internet drain. So with that, let's kind of get into the Megaport portal. I'm in my Azure portal. You can see that I already have my ExpressRoute circuit enabled or spun up here. We'll use this in the demo. Here's my ExpressRoute service key. And you can see I also am in my AWS environment. I don't have any connections yet because we haven't built anything. So let's go into the portal. Kind of zoom around. This is our dashboard. So you can see that this is the Megaport globe with our rocket ship going around the whole globe. You can see I can spin this around, and all of these here are actual ports or services that are spun up on in my account. Now, this is a dev test account. So there's a lot of stuff in here. It's not mine, but I can spin this around and I can find what's in the United States. I can zoom in and then it'll show me, what my connections are between where I have my ports, my VXCs between these ports. If I wanted to zoom in on a specific place, I could zoom in here and say, okay, I have data centers here. This is the Nova data center. I also have the Salt Lake, the Data Bank data center and the Flexentials data center. So you can zoom in and zoom out based on how granular you want to get, or if you're searching for data centers in a specific region. Again, like I said, we have about 950 globally. And this is just kind of the dashboard view. Here's where you'll see all your services. So you can search on it. Let's see, I don't have any in here right now. So oh, I do have some stuff in here. So I built these yesterday as a test. But if you're looking for a specific service, you can search it up here, right? And not have to go through pages and pages and try to find out what you want. These are our access services like I went through, talked about earlier. You can create a port. It's just think about it as a port on your router or a switch that gets enabled on our platform. You can create a Megaport cloud router. That's that layer 3 virtual router where you can connect multiple clouds in region. And then, of course, we have our Megaport virtual edge, which is a little different. Megaport virtual edge is a virtual appliance where you can load on it says bring your own license, like your Palo Alto license or your Fortinet license, potentially Aruba or Cisco SD-WAN. We support about 8 different vendors, and then you can put your license on one of our virtual edges, and then you can bring your SD-WAN tunnels into that virtual edge, just like you might have an appliance in your data center. And the reason that might be important is, let's say that you're a globally dispersed company and your head ends are in St. Louis, right? So I have my appliances in my St. Louis data center. And when I want to have connectivity to like Azure or whatever, I would bring all those SD-WAN tunnels back into my head end controllers. And then from there, send them out to whatever cloud I'm going to get to. Well, if I wanted to put one of these virtual edges, let's say out in Phoenix, then I could have a short SD-WAN tunnel going from like LA to Phoenix, or I could even put an MVE actually in LA, and then use the Megaport private backbone to get connectivity back to my data center in St. Louis. We won't deploy this today, but I just want to let you know kind of what it was. So let's start with our design. We were going to create a port. We're going to put it in neutrality in St. Louis. You can see all of the different neutrality locations we're in: Chicago, Houston, Indy, Kansas City, KC2, and here's our St. Louis one. So I'm going to do next. I'm going to figure out what bandwidth I want. Now I can have 1 gig ports or 10 gig ports. 1 gig ports and 10 gig ports are the same cost. So for this, I'm going to go with the 10 gig port. I'll also tell you, we also have 100 gig ports in a lot of our locations. This one doesn't happen to be 100 gig enabled, but if you had a requirement for that, we would accommodate those 100 gig ports. I'm going to give this a name. And this is the global price list. Your pricing may be different based on your contract. I'm going to choose month-to-month term, which means that I can spin this up and turn it off whenever I want, and there's no ETLs. You could have a 12-month term with the price break, 24-month term, 36-month term, and I could also auto renew. Now, I can't auto renew on a month-to-month, but if I came in here on 12 months and I wanted it to auto renew, then I could just click this button. Or if I didn't want it to auto renew, I would just turn it off. I can have port diversity. We have what's called red zones and blue zones. They're different stack of Cisco NCS hardware on different power panels that are in the data centers, different transport feeds coming into them, different, UPSs that are required from the data center. So if I wanted to create a diverse pair, then I could say DNP live, and I can make this one live 2. And those would be my diverse ports. Some data centers we will allow, depending upon our contracts with those data center operators, you can have a switch here that says, go ahead and Megaport order the cross connect for me. In this case, if you need us to order your cross connect because you didn't have that type of arrangement with the data center operator, then you just reach out to your sales contact and we'll figure out how we can get you a manual contract for a cross connect. I can disable or enable lag ports. Lag ports are if I want to put two 10 gig ports together and make it a 20 gig port. They would need to be in the same diversity zone, meaning red on red with red or blue with blue. I couldn't be able to build that as a diverse pair on red, one in blue, and then enable lag. That wouldn't work. So we're going to leave lag turned off. I'm going to go ahead and do next. I'm going to add these two ports. Now, what it does is it puts it over here in my Megaport shopping cart. From here, I haven't ordered anything yet. I do have it kind of staged here, but it tells you that not ordered yet, use ordering the sidebar on the left. So once I want to order these, I would go in here. It's going to validate my order. It's going to tell me that, it's $600 per port. And then I can order these now. So this is going to take about, I don't know, 60 seconds to deploy, where I can get my LOA CFA and give this to Neutrality in St. Louis and get them to run cross connects over to my cage. While we're waiting for this to be done, I'm going to take a quick break here and ask Christina if we have any questions in the queue.
No questions.
Thank you, Christina. All right. While this is turning up, I'm going to go ahead and say, well, now I want to create off of this port a connection to AWS. So I'm going to just click on here and say AWS. Here's all my different when I click on AWS here, I'm going to choose whether I want hosted VIF or hosted connections. For ease, I'm just going to say hosted VIF on this one. If you don't know the difference between hosted VIF and hosted connections, you can go ahead and get in touch with me or ask in the chat box. And if we have some time, we'll get to that. So let's just do a hosted VIF. You can see all the locations that we're in. We're in about 42 hosted VIF locations globally and 110 hosted connection locations globally. We're going to use Chicago. And you can see that I'm in EQ4 and QTS in Chicago. I could also go straight to Columbus if I wanted to, because we do have NNIs in Columbus with AWS right there in Cologic's COL3. So let's do this in Chicago. 6 milliseconds away. I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to choose, let's say 50 meg. I can go up to 5 gig because that's the limit on a hosted VIF. On hosted connections, you could go up to 25 gig. I'm going to I can put in my own VLAN here. I'm going to let it auto assign. So our APIs will negotiate with the AWS what VLAN I want to be on. I'm going to choose my no monthly term. This is going to give me a place where I can put in my account ID. So I'm going to go into AWS. I'm going to grab my account number. I am going to come put it back in the portal. Let's move you. And I'm going to give it my ASN. Let's use 65001. I could put in my IP addresses if I wanted to do it. Otherwise, they'll be auto assigned by AWS. And with AWS, you also have to have a BGP authorization key. it will auto assign, or I could put one in here. So we're just gonna go through this, summarizes that I'm buying 50 megs, VXC states enabled. Here's my pricing, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add this VXC to my cart. Okay, now you can see that these two ports that I have, they've already spun up in the time that I built this connection to AWS. I can download the LOA on each of them. And this is the way it comes out. I can print this, save it, and print it, and give this over to Neutrality in St. Louis. And it'll tell them here's a single mode fiber pair, here's the port assignments, and that we use SC connectors. If that takes them 24 hours to get done, then these ports will come up in 24 hours. Let's go ahead and order this. And then I'm going to come back and make a connection to Microsoft Azure. Now, in reality, I'm adding this VXC to AWS, but this is never really going to come up because my port is not green. I don't have the cross connect. I'm just showing you how easy it is to use the Megaport portal and make these connections to different cloud service providers. You also see that all of my little add connections went away here because now I have a connection. But what I can do here is click this add connection box. I'm going to go build, let me stop here. I can build cloud VXCs. I can build private VXCs between my two ports. Like I said, if I had something in Neutrality in St. Louis and maybe CoreSite in um, Ashburn, Virginia, or Ruston, Virginia, I could build a VXC between them. Here's where I would choose my Megaport internet, and then I would choose the internet out of Chicago because that's the closest internet location that I have. I could use internet exchange, which is direct peering between companies that subscribe to this exchange. I do have a Megaport marketplace. When I go into this marketplace, you'll see hundreds of different type of vendors and providers that I have. I could say if I wanted to go to SAP, I could build a connection to SAP, or if I wanted to go to Cisco WebEx, you can see I have multiple destinations by Cisco WebEx. Now, Cisco WebEx, they keep most of their ports private. So we would work with you and with Cisco to figure out if we want to create that VXC to Dallas, Chicago, San Jose, wherever they may have ports. Potentially, you might want to use somebody like 8x8, right, for your voice stuff. So I could click on 8x8 and get to their destination. So this is the different type of customers or partners we have on our Megaport marketplace. And lastly, I'm going to show you that there's something called a service key. So this here, if let's say Danco is going to merge with another company, I could create a service key, give this service key to my company that I'm acquiring, and they could build a connection to my port. What it looks like in here is when I want to build a connection, meaning you gave me the service key, I would just put that service key here and it's going to build a VXC based on the attributes that was assigned to it between the two customers. So these are like B2B type relationships. I do want to show, anyway, going back in here, we're going to create a connection to Microsoft Azure. So we're going to go down here and see I have 264 ports across Azure NNIs globally. Now, this is a little different than AWS, and Google is the same way, as well as Oracle, where you start in the cloud service provider's environment to get the quote software key. Microsoft called it an express route service key. You can see that, as I said before, I already had one pre-built, so I'm going to copy this express route service key. I'm going to go back into my Megaport portal. I'm going to drop this key in here. We're pinging over to Azure to see if this is a valid key, and then it'll return back here in a second and say, okay, it's a valid key. This key is built in Chicago, and you have a primary and secondary available to you, right? So I want to look up here. This is in the blue zone. So I want to put this connection on my blue zone router. It is required for Microsoft SLAs to have both a primary and secondary BGP up and active. However, it is your choice if you want to just put a primary or a secondary up. I'm going to do next. I'm going to build my connection name. It's 50 meg is what I built the key for. I'm going to let it auto assign my VLAN. Again, no term. I'm going to use this here, and I'm going to say I'm going to use VLAN 100 over on the Azure side. So whatever VLAN is assigned on quote the AN side, we will convert that VLAN over to VLAN 100 in the Microsoft Azure side. Let's just do this. Let's make this VLAN 200. And then I'll do next. Gives me the summary, gives me my Azure details. There's my express route service key. And I'm going to add VXC. I'm going to review the order, and I'm going to order it. I could build on my secondary port the other connection or VXC into Azure. Looks like I have about 3 minutes left. So let's let this deploy, and I'm going to ask if there's any questions in the queue.
No questions today.
Thank you. Let this give it a second and get deployed. And then when this comes up, this is the point now where once these come up, like these VXCs similar down here to like Azure, these are layer 2 connections that I built. So I could now create, once they came up and went green, the layer 3 BGP peering connection between my router and the Microsoft Edge router, or my router and the AWS routers. Um, I could also put an internet on this. Maybe let's use this port and put an internet on it. So put Megaport internet real quick. Take it out of Chicago. Gonna do 100 meg. Yeah, let's do a gig. You can see the rate's $420. This is on a different port. Let's use VLAN 300. And it's lagging a little bit. Put it in my cart, view the order, and deploy it now. So now what I have is I have my AWS and Azure on one port. I have my Megaport internet on the other port. I could put this on the same port as Azure and AWS on a different VLAN. I built diverse ports because I was going to put the other Azure connection on this new port. Oh, fun. I think it's my internet because it seems like my mouse is lagging. But once this gets loaded up, then I could build my second connection with the secondary to Azure on this port. With that, I'm going to stop here and say, hope you enjoyed our session. If there's any questions, Christina, is there any in the queue?
There was a question about the recording, which will be shared afterwards.
Okay. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this and get a little bit more information about Megaport. If you have any other questions, please reach out to Megaport or your account director. And I wish you all a great weekend. Thank you.